Hey, what did you talk about this week?
Welcome back to the Corporate Kitchen. I'm your host, Tiger. This week we've been talking about work friends. Let's just get right into it at the table. I know there may have been some animosity when we were talking about calamari in the kitchen and what it actually is. So I actually got a text message about it too. If it happened to anyone else where you had that realization of what calamari is, congratulations. But a lot of what we talked about had to do with communication and defining relationships with others. And I know that a lot of people aren't as extroverted as I am. A lot of people are introverted. We had the pandemic that honestly probably made more people introverted. And if you weren't, you're not as comfortable talking to people publicly because you didn't have to do it. This is one of those practice makes perfect things. And if you went through the pandemic with a smaller circle, coming out of it, you're not looking to expand it. You're not looking to make more friends. You may not even see the reasoning for it. Those of you that are entering corporate America now and kind of missed the entire pandemic in corporate America, you have a prime opportunity to do what a lot of people are disadvantaged at by coming into the office or traveling and being able to establish relationships with people that honestly are going to be open to it. You know, on their side, they're not going to pull you in, but this is your opportunity to give that push. Now, for all the introverts, the first action that we're going to talk about on the table is really going to help you the most. And the first action is stop accepting applications. When we talked in the kitchen, we talked about how there is no such thing as work friends. They're your colleagues. Just like when you were in school, they were your classmates. The average school class, we're talking couple hundred students, maybe thousands. You know, we're not talking, 12. If you graduated from a school of 12 people, yikes, but this isn't fully applicable to you. But most of us, average normal size class, couple hundred students. You didn't classify all of those people in your life. You didn't give them a role. You didn't decide if they were friend or foe or mentor, sponsor, coach, teacher, whatever. Some people were just classmates. There were some people that you knew. Same thing applies in the field. You have to come into it where once you establish your circle, you stop accepting applications. Before we get too deeper in that, I do want to start off with the establishment of the circle, right? Because before you can turn off, we're no longer accepting applications, you got to start with that core circle. So for me, I had a couple classmates in high school that ended up becoming really good friends, now my best friends, and at this point, old friends, seeing how long it's been. But they didn't follow me in my corporate pursuit. I actually went to my first job out of college in a different state than I went to for college. Kind of a reset of life. And I became open to applications at that point, right? Walk into corporate, you have all these colleagues, you don't really have your circle. For those of you that like sports, I mean, a football team's too big, so baseball team is a little too big. Let's stick with basketball, right? When you think about what that circle is, your starting five plus some bench players. I didn't have a full starting five with me when I first started my corporate career. When I did take that first job, the group that I was in had a good number. I want to say like a solid 25 people in it. And the majority were around my age, you know, plus or minus 4 years. So around my age, fresh out of college, early in their career. We had a couple senior people. Most people were early in their career. And it really provided me an opportunity to kind of go through everyone's individual applications and identify what I'm going to do with this person, whether they're going to stay a colleague, whether I'm going to pursue them into a friend role, whether they are well beyond me, very wise, and could become a potential advocate for my career. I had an opportunity to do this. The funny part is one person approached me and from just a few conversations we had told me that you're going to be my best friend and you're going to be in my wedding. It in retrospect, it was like a cool moment because when you hear that at the time, it's like, okay, we'll see. But then it actually happened, and it did happen, and you're like, wow, like, no, we really did click. So out of the 25 people, there was one person that I really, really did click with. And obviously from what I just said, I ended up being in this person's wedding and we're best friends. And at this point, with how far we are in our career, old friends now. But in that first interaction, the first couple interactions, it is weird because it's just like if you are starting high school for the first time, you kind of s- gravitate towards the people that you feel the most comfortable with, whether it's from like mindedness, similar thoughts and connections, or other things. You tend to gravitate those towards those people first and then spread your wings out. So this person was one of those that I immediately gravitated towards and felt that we were a lot closer and similar. And there was one other person too that the three of us, were the pretty much the three amigos and started that core relationship to figure out, do we all click together, or and this is going to be something more, or is this something we have to pass? So we hung out a lot between the three of us, and we did hang out with the other team members as well that was around our age. So I would say in totality, like the number of us that was hanging out consistently, trying to get to know one another and figure out where we stand, it's probably a solid 15. Obviously the three of us were a clique, and other people had their own cliques, but we hung out pretty consistently for the first 6 to 8 months. And around that 6 month mark, and 6 months is, if you're hanging out with someone consistently, 6 months is a good enough time to get to know someone, especially considering that you're working with that person every day or see them at work every day. After that 6 month mark, you start to see the pivots. You start to see, all right, this person I'm cool with. If they hit me up directly, we'll hang out. These people, you're just a colleague. You hit me up directly, I probably won't answer. But if you hit up my boy and my boy hit me up, all right, then because my boy hit me up, I'll go. But you directly, not going to happen. So 6 months, we really started to get that first filter through of like, all right, these people are going to go into the best friend application, these possibly friend. No one was in an advocacy swim lane at that time, mainly because everyone was still early in their career. Didn't feel as though anyone fit that bill. And at that point, once I made that establishment of relationships I want to pursue with those colleagues, I stopped accepting applications. You get to know more people, but you can't juggle so many different relationships at one time. You want to focus, build, and grow the ones that you have before you start adding to it. I mean, not this is not like a sports team where every year you're going to draft new talent and and have to replace someone in your starting five. No, no. If you have a solid starting five and they stay with you, then there's no reason to draft. There's no reason to pick up someone. I mean, you can meet someone that's super cool, but if you don't have the capacity to fit them in your life, don't overdo it. Don't force yourself because the amount of time and effort that you will have to give to that person, you have to take away from another. So unless you're comfortable and you're okay doing that, don't pursue it. So for me, after I had everyone established, again, I stopped accepting applications. And that's what you have to do. At some point you got to be like, okay, I know the relationships I'm going to try to foster and hold to that. Mind you, some of them don't work out. That's fine. If you if they don't work out, you see it through, you understand why it doesn't work out, and guess what? Now you have a roster spot open. Instead of trying to take, you know, like in the NFL, 90 people to training camp and get down to a solid 53, 52, you stick with that core, starting five, couple bench players. If one of the starting five drop, you can easily throw that bench player in. If the starting five stays there, you're not going to give as much effort outside of that. Yeah, you have a bench, but that's the purpose of it being a bench. You don't have to put as much effort on the bench players as you do the starting five. The starting five is where all your time and effort is, and you want to keep that circle small. When I came into corporate America, like I said, those people that I established who I wanted to pursue, the two ones that I initially clicked with, they made the starting five, and then one other person made the starting five. A couple other people, bench players. So I had two slots open. I understood where my ground was and what my ability to know and expand my circle looked like for the next year, for the next time, for when we're starting to meet other people. How many people can I bring in? And I know it gets like real tough to devote this time and effort when you're in your career because you're so focused on performing, you're focused on making sure you do a good job so that you can make this money. Also, in this day and age, a lot of people are not staying in the same company. And that makes it difficult too, where you establish great either advocacy relationships or, friendships with the people that were originally colleagues at a certain company, and then you change companies. That happened to me, and that's going to be the second story I'm going to give you. I made those connections that I told you about, had those three people in my starting five, but guess what? I changed companies. None of those people came with me. No one in my starting five, no one in the bitch. All those people were still at the same company. I was the one that left. Does that mean I need a new starting five? Absolutely not. I know the introverts are saying, "Oh, thank you, thank you." Yeah, and you don't need to start over just because you changed companies. It's totally okay. If they are truly a friend and not a colleague, a variable such as where you work is negligible to that relationship. If that is a true friendship, you changing jobs, you changing work locations, you changing your uh, marital status, having kids should not change that relationship. If they were your best friend before you left that company, they should be your best friend after you leave the company. That shouldn't change. So when I changed companies, I didn't leave those people behind. They stayed exactly where they were, and I had two spots open. I had two spots open in my starting five. And that was a great gauge for me going to a new company and now having all these new colleagues to figure out, okay, based off of now, and I was at a big company, so it's like based off of now having tens of thousands of people as colleagues, how many am I really going to accept applications for, and how many positions do I truly have open? And it's two, right? Out of those tens of thousands of people, I may interact with the solid, huh, I probably interacted with a solid 100, 200 people. And from that, I had two spots. Makes it a lot easier to deal with and reduce the colleague number, or I'm sorry, reduce the application number from the colleagues when you look at it like that. So it's like, I'm not trying to be everyone's friend. Some people, I just work with you. Not even some, a lot of people, I just work with you. One person in particular, though, I do want to bring up, and I know I used an MBA reference, so I do want to shift because this is the corporate kitchen. So let me give you a kitchen reference to help with this, and then I'll tell you the story. If you want to think about the starting five and bench players mindset in the kitchen, think of it as your knife set. So your second action is mold your starting five around your knife set. A classic knife set is your chef's knife, your bread knife, a carving knife, a paring knife, and utility knife. Make up your five main knives. And then you get I would say like 5 to 8 steak knives. I mean, it kind of fits perfectly in the basketball reference, right? Because in basketball, it's starting 5 plus 7 bench players. Common knife set is those 5 knives plus 7 steak knives, right? When you think about it as a knife set and the different things that those knives do, it will help you establish the different type of roles that and relationships you should have in your starting 5. Your circle should not be 5 best friends. If you want to have a healthy career and healthy balance in your life, you got to diversify that closest group. Having 5 best friends only, number one, makes you miss out on advocacy relationships, and that becomes a gap in your development. But also, two, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work in order to support emotionally, physically, conversationally 5 people at a time. You want to mix that up, right? So chef's knives. Obviously, that's the top, that's the best, and that should be your best friend because that's the knife you're going to use the most. That's the cream of the crop right there. We can make different comparisons and analogies with the other ones, but the point is they all should be different. They all don't hold the same role. So you might say my bread knife is going to be my old friend because that's old reliable there that I never use. Your carving knife could be your advocacy relationship because that's the one that you're going to use to kind of make a notch into a certain career area when you're ready to grow. Utility could be something else, paring knife, something else, and then the steaks knives, obviously all your bench players. But the point is, you want to make a grouping of different relationships and not all the same. When I changed companies, one of the open spots I had was actually, let me take that back. When I changed companies, I already had the best friend role locked and I had an advocacy relationship locked. So I was kind of in like okay, so I got the best friend advocacy. What else is there? Obviously there is the path for a romantic relationship, but I was one of those people, and as we talked about earlier, I don't date in the office. So it would have been someone external to the company. But then there's back friend that we talked about in the kitchen, a friend that's secretly an enemy. They say keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. That's not necessarily a public relationship to have, or something that you want to keep in the forefront, but it is something just to be aware of. Um, the one friend that I did make that I do want to talk about, and we talked about it in the dating episode of something not to pass up. It's a non-romantic relationship. It's not in the Merriam-Webster, so we can't use the actual word as, but we can't use the actual word as fact. But in the dating episode, we did talk about work spouse, where there's this slang industry, common term now in corporate America of this idea of a work spouse and it's pretty much a best friend. It is pretty much a platonic best friend that you can go to as a confidant and fully trust. And I'm a full believer in that type of relationship just because whenever you are at a company, you do need that confidant. You do need that person that you can tell secrets to, give information to without concern of them telling someone, especially considering that they understand. That's the difference. You can have a spouse at home and there could be a opportunity for that spouse to tell someone and you get in trouble. But will they truly understand? Will they truly be in a position to digest that information and perfectly cook and deliver it to the person that will be the quote unquote tattletale? No, that the risk of that is not as high as someone that obviously in the company and it's like, all right, if you tell anyone this, I'm probably fired. So you do need that confidant, and it doesn't always have to be, the same sex best friend that you may establish or you may have. So for me, and the story that I am going to tell you is when I actually found mine. So I was at a company, I changed companies, left the best friends and the advocacy at the old one, still kept in touch with them, met a lot of people at this new company. Role required a lot of travel, both domestic and international. A lot of people at the company were like lifers, like been there forever, second, third generation. So there were a lot of cliques already established. And when you get into companies, you got to be aware of that. If you're talking to someone that's already on someone else's starting five, or if they are a free agent, there were not many free agents here where they were, fresh like me and looking for a new relationship within the workplace or advocacy relationship. Most of them already established. They created their cliques, they have their circle of trust, and I'm outside of that circle of trust. It helps me because I know that I can never fully trust them because their trust is 100% devoted into someone else. We could never get to 100% if they're already playing for someone else's team, right? A little bit in that role, there was an opportunity to travel overseas. And it was a small group of us. It was five of us. Three of them I knew. The other two, I didn't really know. I wasn't accepting their applications. You could consider, their applications were closed. But of that three, one of them was the person of subject for this story. And then the two, their applications were definitely under review as potential friends, as potential, not potential best friends, but definitely potential friends of someone that I can put into a trust circle. Not most trusted, but trust circle. And this trip was definitely a great opportunity to kind of really explore, get out of the office, but still working, and almost test to see, hey, is this really someone that I can build a friendship with and trust, or is this person, bat crazy and never mind? We go overseas. The trip took us more than a week, meaning we had to stay over a weekend. This is when it became interesting because now it's like, all right, we're going to be there over the weekend. What do we do? Does everyone do their individual thing or do we group up? And this was an opportunity to figure out with those people, hey, are they going to be someone that I can develop a friendship with or not? So what ended up happening is the two people whose applications were closed, they did their own thing. They knew each other. They did their own thing. Of the three remaining, the one person this story's about, that person and I went somewhere, and then the other two they went their independent ways. So I went with one person, and we ended up taking a train to go to a nearby country, just visiting another country. What's funny about it is that once we made the plans, everyone realized where we were all going and how to get there, logistics, not, and the whole nine yards. You realize you take a second and you're like, wow, like I'm really going to figure this person out. Either we're going to go on this train ride, go visit this place and come back great friends, or I'm never going to talk to this person again. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. This wasn't a, 10-minute train ride. It was a little while of a train ride. So it could become really good and a great time or very awkward. And then would have to work with the person the next week and it would be bad. So got on the train, chatted. Obviously, since we see each other at work, we've had conversations here and there, but this was probably the longest, consecutive minute conversation that we've ever had because we just had the time to kill. Once we got to the destination, it was a lot of walking, and I had no problem with it. Some people are not great with walking, but we know how the differences in travel can create that first variable of like, oh, it's a variable of good or bad, right? When those city people that walk fast and suburban people that walk slow, it's like, oh, that can be the first conflict if you're trying to get to a destination and see as much things as possible. If the other person's like, no, let's take it slow and, just not go anywhere. Didn't have that problem. So first check mark, boom, there. Like we're both agreeing that we're going to sprint, try to see as much stuff as possible. The very first thing we came across was a nice brewery. And both of us agreed that we wanted to go check it out and go do the tour. Boom, check mark. Like now we have similar interests. There was some historical buildings and a fort to go see as well. We went and saw all of that, and it was cool to have the like interests, and not only like from a, hey, we both like the same things and we're both interested in it, but also like one's not dragging the other. And that was the point that I was trying to make earlier, where it's like the trip can go really good and we both enjoy it, we both see it, and I realize that this is a friendship that I can build, or one person enjoys it, the other person hates it, and it's like, all right, never again, go and I'll take the train back without you, whatever. So we ended up visiting all these different places there and really had a really good time. And on the train ride back, had another great conversation and really highlighted that, hey, this person, application accepted, I'm going to make this person a friend. And that person ended up becoming one of my best friends. They had a top 5 roster spot of being a best friend. Without that trip, I don't know if we would have ever established that or got to that point. It really was the highlight and the opportunity to really show which way from colleague does this person go if they go. And again, went from colleague, friend to now best friend. So part of knowing whether or not you're going to pursue advocacy or friendship type relationships with people, just understanding your roster spot. I was at a different company. I had a roster spot open for a best friend at that company. And I took it, right? And that person, like I said, the term that we use now, I guess, is work spouse, that I know some people like, some people don't like, but in that mind, that was a different knife than the others I already had established. So it was easier to put effort and have an opportunity with that type of relationship, because since I was at a different company, I needed a confidant that understood what happens at that company. The old friends that I had, the best friends that I had from the previous company, didn't understand as well because they didn't work there. So it was good to have that confidant there. And I still talk to that person today. I mean, very close. I don't work at that company anymore, but I still have a lot of conversations about that company. So when I do, that person's still my confidant, and we do talk a lot about different things there. So when you're going about trying to get your friend set, or at least your relationship set from colleagues, think about it as a knife set. And it's okay if you're heavy on one side versus the other. And when I say heavy, I mean on the advocacy versus friendships type, right? If you're more old friend, best friend, and you even date in the office, or you have girlfriend, boyfriend type thing, that's and less advocacy relationships, that's fine. If you have 3 advocacy relationships and 2 on the other side, that's fine too. You just don't want 5-0, right? You don't want 5 best friends and then all your bench players are advocacies. You're not going to be putting the right effort into the right relationships when you need them. Last action, which should be obvious here. I know earlier I talked about the draft and how we're not drafting because we aren't accepting applications all the time. That holds true because it's not on a strict cadence. I said that because it's not on a strict cadence. If you think about the draft for any major sports team, it happens the same time every year. That's not going to be true for your friendships, right? You're not leaving the company at the same time every year. You're not breaking friendships at the same time every year. It happens sporadically, and it does happen, but there's no set time frame. So part of your career journey that you need to do, and as the third action is, you have to find what your reevaluation period is. At some point, you do have to do a evaluation and reevaluate where you stand with everyone. And it doesn't have to be on a specific cadence. It could be randomized. You go the first 5 years in your career and you never check, and you're like, huh, let me take a minute. And as I plan for the next 5 years in my career, look at it. And then maybe after that first check, you don't do it again for another 10 years. Yeah, that's okay. There's no strict cadence that you have to do this, but you do have to do it. You do have to do a reevaluation. You can't carry dead weight. You can't carry relationships that you're no longer putting effort into. And oh, by the way, if you truly do find a diamond in the rough that's sitting there in your colleague circle, it may be an opportunity for you to reevaluate to figure out, do they fit better in your starting five than someone else? Trades happen. Trades happen all the time. If someone's in your top five, they leave the company, it shouldn't affect your relationship with them, but life is life. Let's say they move different states too, so neither one of you put in the effort that is required for the relationship that you had, and it kind of dwindled down and it wasn't as strong as it used to be. But then there's a colleague that came up that's a diamond that you found, and you want to bring that diamond in and drop that person down to a steak knife. That's okay, right? If you do that reevaluation, that's totally fine for you to make that decision. You want to make sure it's mutual and that the person knows, like, they're going down to the steak knives, and you're bringing this other person in. It will kind of show it your actions as well. You don't have to completely drop that person off the knife set entirely, but it's good to do that reevaluation so that you know who you're going to put your time and energy into. Again, we don't want to carry around dead weight, but then we also don't want to miss true opportunities that are in front of ourselves. This happens a lot with advocacy relationships. When people meet certain people and they miss the opportunity to truly connect and sustain a sponsorship or mentorship opportunity. Obviously, everyone can't be your mentor, and no one has time for that, but the ones that are going to be really, really good are going to be few and far in between. And if you get into a situation where you're like, hey, I have 6 really potential good ones, you can't put, you shouldn't put effort into all 6 of them equally, because you just don't have that kind of time. Someone has to make the starting 5, and the other person's going to be a steak knife. And you figure out down the road, oh, that steak knife needs to be upgraded to a carving knife, and the carving knife can drop down to a steak knife. You do that reevaluation. So for me, when I realized I needed to do a reevaluation, is just the growing part. So when I first started my career, there was, as I mentioned, there was like the 25 people that I worked with and were around my age. So one person in particular was close to the people that I already had an application under review with, who I wanted to go to a friend level relationship. That person also had the same type of relationship pursuit with them. So I kind of just used transitive property there, which that's a mistake. Don't ever do that. I try to use transitive property. If I'm applying to be this person's friend and that person's applying to be that person's friend, I should also be applying to be that person's friend, sort of thing. That doesn't work. It didn't work in this situation. So I tried to connect with that person, see where they would go. And although they connected with my friends really well, I didn't grow as strong of a connection. I stayed cool with them, and it wasn't a thing of, hey, because you're friends with my friends, you're automatically going to be a steak knife. No, that's not true. That's not true, and that wasn't necessary. And I kind of did that in the initial phase. In retrospect, I understand that. But in the initial phase, no, I did. I did make that person a steak knife and kind of held that person there just because I knew that we were going to be in the like circles. We were going to be hanging out all the time since we're friends of friends. And that's what I thought about it. In retrospect, again, just because that happens, you don't have to make a mistake knife. But I did. That person ended up taking a new job, moving to another state. And that's when I grew fully apart. Now, what I didn't realize at the time was because I made the person a steak knife, I never took the time to reevaluate to drop them off the knife set. So now when I'm meeting new people, when I change companies myself and I'm seeing like the spots that I have available, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of potential knives in this set. I have more knives than I do slots available. Oh, because I didn't do a full evaluation to see who I drop and who I maintain. Drop some people, some new opportunities open up. It's like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. I have a lot more balance. Ta-da. You really have to do those re-evaluations sometimes and make sure that people are in the right slot so that you're putting the correct effort where you need to go. I know I've said that plenty of times in this episode, but that's what it comes down to. We don't have a lot of time during the day. I've talked to this person outside of the friends hanging out, all our mutual friends. Outside of that, I've talked to this person maybe twice in my life. So obviously, like, they don't fit in the knife set. Like, obviously. So it's no knock on that person. It's not like that person did anything wrong. We just never established that type of relationship to have that person classified anything more than a colleague or not even friend of a friend, right? It's just a colleague. This is someone I know. It's not someone that I would trust. And I know by definition, friend of a friend seems correct. But just like work friends, we want to be careful throwing that word around because it's like, is this person trusted? If you're in a room and it's your friends and friends of friends in there, can you give that friend of yours confidential information? Right? That's the difference, right? Would you disclose confidential information in front of a friend if your mutual friend is in that room? 9 times out of 10, that answer is no. So don't refer to them as friend of a friend. They're just colleague. If you didn't establish that relationship with them, their relationship with other people that you know is negligible. Because it's not about their relationship with them. It's about your relationship with them. You have to put that in the forefront and do the reevaluation so that you know who to trust. You know who to put the effort in. Now, if you tell your friend and your friend ends up telling that person, that's a different problem. And that problem's not with the third person, it's with your friend. So just keep that in the forefront of your mind. Time time is money. We don't have a lot of time. Some of you have a lot of money, but most of us don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot to play with. And if you think about it in that respect as well, when you have your knife set, you don't have a lot of money to play with, so you can't have $1 million chef knife, $500,000 bread knife, $200,000 paring knife. Not that that exists, but from an analogy standpoint, you understand that you can't invest all the money to get the best of the best. You do what you can with what you have, and we're all trying to strive for that. So I learned that lesson of taking the time to do a reevaluation with that one person and really understanding what a friend of a friend is and is not, and just like work friends, not to use it. So, remember 3 actions. Number 1, introverts are going to love it. Stop accepting applications. At some point, you got to turn off the applications button, and it's going to do you good. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Number 2, with the knife set, have the different style knives, just like the different style relationships. And then number 3, just take the time to reevaluate it. So I'm going to give you one more story. So last story alert, bonus story. So this is a situation that a lot of you may find yourself in, and I'm going to try to make it quick because I know that we're high on time. A lot of you may find yourself in this situation. We talked a lot about how you will establish relationships with people, but we didn't talk a lot about how people establish relationships with you. And it's not always necessarily the same and equal, where you may consider that person a steak knife in your set, but in their set, you're a chef knife. That can cause issues. And that has happened to me a couple times where we weren't equal knives in each other's set. You have to be very careful with that. So share you an example when I had that. Very quick one. So I had one person that I did consider just to be a steak knife. Steak knife, bench player, wasn't going to put as much effort into them as I was going to do the core five. This person had me, either carving or utility. I was definitely in their top five, to the point that when they went to go for another job, they put me down as a reference without telling me. If that happens and they're in your knife set, you should have everything available that you need to know in order to support that knife. You should be able to have the sharpener in hand and sharpen it so that it can cut and do what it needs to do. If you don't, they probably don't belong in your knife set. This person did this, and when I was called for feedback, I realized that I did not have the information on what was going on to truly give this person a great recommendation. I did give a great recommendation at the time, to the best of my ability. I supported this person's career. I believed at the time that this person was a steak knife in my set, and I did everything that I can to give positive review, just really support and help this person get this job. I was a little bit blindsided because I didn't know prior to that I was being put down as a reference. That happens a lot. So you have to be careful of that, of people that have you classified as a different knife than you have them classified. And there will be times where you don't even have them classified in your knife set at all, and you're in theirs. Got to be really careful. So when this situation happened, again, I gave the hiring manager a good recommendation. The person did not end up getting the job, unfortunately, but it wasn't because of me, because I gave the best recommendation that I could. But it was a scenario that really triggered me to say, oh, okay, I need to reevaluate my knife set, because at the time I had no idea what to say and really what to truly give as an examples in order to support all the things that I was saying actively. I had the past, but I didn't have the present. And it made me sit down and think, okay, do I really truly know this person? I haven't put the effort in to really understand what they're currently doing. And if I'm not putting in that level of effort, is it because they're not in my top five, or is it because they're not in my knife set at all? Come to find out, when I did that reevaluation, they're not in my knife set at all. I had other people in my knife set. Never put the effort in it, and came to the realization that I was in that person's top five. They weren't in my knife set at all. And that's okay. You just have to be aware of that and just be careful of that. Some people care more. You see this a lot in advocacy relationships too, where, if they're your sponsor, you will have them in your top five, but they may sponsor a lot of people. So for you, you may be a steak knife, a very important steak knife, but not necessarily in their top five because they have sponsors too and whatnot. So you just got to be careful and be aware of those types of scenarios and be prepared for them. It's definitely a much harder type of relationship to navigate when there are differences of opinions and differences of classification. But I mean, so is life, right? Life is just hard. It reminds me of this one story of,
Hey, you said last story. Can you wrap this up?
oof, okay. I enjoyed working on this menu item with you this week, but let's come to an end while it's still hot. Remember, the ending to one story is the beginning of another. There will be more in store next week at the Corporate Kitchen. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Tiger. Until next time.